As Kaya mentioned in the beginning, talking about Baltic Compass, one of the purposes of the Baltic Compass project is to look at the efficiency and the cost of the economic efficiency of measures around the Baltic. So that one of the outcomes of the Baltic Compass project is to try and influence policy. So this is a real central part of the whole project, is that can we have any policy influence? To have a policy influence, you have to have recommendations. You have to have ideas that you argue. So that what this exercise is the start now of, we're coming to the last year of the Baltic Compass project. We're looking at what have we learned during this time, what kind of recommendations can we develop. And we have a set of what we call emerging findings. And the reason we call them emerging findings is that we don't know how important these are or whether other people think they're important. This is a group within the Baltic Compass project who's looked at what could we recommend. And so one of the thoughts was to take a little time at each of these national roundtables. Tomorrow we'll be in Finland with a similar type of group of people who are representative of both the political community and NGOs and other groups. And we'll be doing a similar exercise there. And what we wanted to do was just get a reaction to some of these emerging findings and see what you think might be important or might not be so important or is not important at all. So that what this exercise is to kind of go through these, and we'll do it in an anonymous way so that I think everyone has got a paper in front of it. Does everyone have a paper that says?
Right away?
Yeah, let's give everybody a paper, and we can follow them up with, everyone can take both a little strip of red ones and a little strip of green ones. So you can pass this out.
One green and one red.
One green and one red. This is an informal, not a scientific survey. It's anonymous, so you don't have to feel like you represent a particular interest. You don't have to feel like I should check this out with my colleagues in the ministry before I put a red spot or a green spot. It's just an informal survey. And the reason is to see where do we, both to try and get an idea of what you think, but also to see what are there the same priorities in Finland as that they are in Estonia. So by doing this, and we'll be in Poland next week, so by doing this, we get a feel for, are these same kind of issues important and equally important in each of the Baltic countries, or is there a difference between them? And this is not scientific, so the difference might be just who is sitting in the room. These kind of surveys are nice. There's no wrong answers, which is always nice. You can't make a mistake. And what we try to do is make this as simple as possible. Kaya and I talked about different ways to make it simple. She had a simple way, and I had a different simple way, and she agreed to my simple way after a lot of pushing. and what we'll do is, with the strips in front of you, the green and the red ones, that we'll go through each of these findings, and I'll just explain just really shortly what it is, not in detail. And then if you immediately have an opinion, put a green that you think this is important, you can put a green spot on it. If you think definitely this is not important, you can put a red spot. If you have absolutely no idea what it's about and think that why is this even here and I don't understand any of it, don't put anything. And then if you feel even strongly, you think this is really, really important, put 2 spots. So you can put 2 red spots or 2 green spots if you want to make it more important. I thought we'd go through these one at a time, but at the end you can change your mind. You can change your mind, put spots on it afterwards. You can look over at your neighbor and say, well, if she really knows what she's doing, I'll put the same as her. Any way you want to do it is fine. So, without further ado, I will go through it one of these at a time and just explain what we kind of thought of when this was written. I didn't write these. I had to interpret them from the people who wrote them and clean up the language a bit. So I spent some time looking at them and kind of sorting them out. The first one has to do with existing legislation. Stronger and precise enforcement of already existing legislation is needed to support a long-term positive development of the agricultural sector as a whole. basically what this is about is that there are some rules and guidelines, and the follow-up on those is not as good as it could be. So that this says we need to follow up on what we already have decided. There are rules, there are guidelines, we don't follow up on them. Oh, if you can ask me if there's something about a detail that you're curious about with this too. So that this can be interactive. Like I say, you can go back to it afterwards if you feel like you want to change your mind, you feel like compared to the other ones that was really not that important, so that there is always regret in this survey. You can always change your mind. The second one, I'm sorry if I see some people are still looking at their papers. You can go back to it if you need to, and we'll have a couple of minutes at the end. You can go back if you want to. Baltic Sea region countries should agree on a timetable for harmonizing implementation of the nitrate directive in the drainage. That the nitrate directive, there are regulations about implementation, and there's different timetables in different countries around the Baltic. This basically says that there should be harmonization of these timetables. Do you strongly agree? Yes, there really should be harmonization. Or, no, I don't agree. Everyone should follow the timetable they need to. So that it's not a right answer here, it's not a wrong answer, it's an opinion. And just a reaction. Your first reaction is usually the right one. Number 3, Baltic Sea region actors should initiate a regional development study of the agricultural and bioeconomic sectors, outlining future business opportunities, incentives, and policies needed. This basically says that there's potential in the Baltic Sea region for promoting agriculture, and that the Baltic Sea region as a whole should be more involved in developing a promotion of agricultural interest in the Baltic Sea region. You're welcome. I'm not sure if you're not asking any questions because everything is so clear, you're just hoping this will go over, or what it is, but we'll just keep going. You're welcome to interrupt. And then we were looking at some of the CAP program, the proposed CAP program. And these are some recommendations. Now there's a whole series, I think it's about 5 or 6 different recommendations that are attached to the coming CAP. So the new Common Agricultural Program that's under revision. The first is to provide full and competitive coverage for costs and income losses for farmers who apply agro-environmental measures in environmentally sensitive areas. So provide full and competitive coverage. What this basically says is that to cover 100% of income losses, but also competitive where there's competition between agricultural production on one hand and competition of environmental use on another. When prices for wheat go up, it's really tough to get agricultural producers not to take land out of, or to keep land out of production. The second recommendation on the CAP was to expand measures for permanent grasslands, buffer zones, reduce tillage practices, green cover crops on arable land in all environmentally sensitive areas, and provide economic incentives for participation in these measures. Some countries have different degrees of this. The ones where they are doing it, they should expand it, this says. The ones that aren't doing it should include it. Sure. You can ask as many questions as you need.
Exactly in this context, is environmentally sensitive area.
It isn't,
Because agri-environment measures usually they should be implemented, and it would be good if they're implemented horizontally. So all of the, in this case, these environmentally sensitive areas, is it meant like nature protection areas, etc., or it's just like high nature value areas, or is it some kind of specific term now used in this context?
it's not a specific term. It's not definitely.
Okay.
Can also non-trade vulnerable zone.
Yeah, it's not a specific like in the British environmental sensitive areas. It's sort of a differentiation. We look at the Swedish case between northern Sweden with a lot of forest, southern Sweden a lot of agriculture. That one of them is more environmentally sensitive. The third ECAP recommendation was to introduce new measures and programs with incentives for farmers to improve nutrient management on the farm level, supported by nutrient balance accounting and soil phosphorus status class calculations. What this says is that farmers should be keeping nutrient account balances. In Denmark, they do this already. I think you do that in Germany too. That to keep account balances on the farm of inputs and outputs of nutrients, which puts a burden on farmers, and also to look at soil testing and soil reporting for phosphorus levels.
In Germany, there started a discussion on which level should this balance calculations done. We have it in our Dinger recommendations in our fertilization directive that it has to be done on the field level. And there is now an argumentation that a farmer, as a manager, as responsible for his farm, should do these calculations on a farm level. Because he has not the management responsibility on the field strip level, but on the farm level as an enterprise.
So this is whether you feel like that this is something you agree with, that farmers should have this responsibility, in this case being compensated for it as well. The next one was to promote collective agri-environmental measures on a landscape level, to take a landscape perspective when looking at environmental measures. This allows for things like looking at wetlands, for example, where you would prioritize wetlands that might go over several different property boundaries. So that this is a long one, but I think the first part is the only really ensure that the requirement for crop rotation discussed within CAP 2014 is not applicable for permanent grasslands in the Baltic Sea region. This requirement can lead to drastically increased losses of nutrients to water and grasslands when grasslands are plowed. Basically, in the proposal for having a crop mix and rotation, that it might be applied to grasslands, which would be detrimental. Plowing grasslands is nothing that is good for nutrient losses. The next one was to consider multiple benefits of agri-environmental measures as a way to promote resilience for agriculture and the ecosystem. That there should be an increased attention to multi-benefits. How this will be done, I have no idea, but that to consider it and to prioritize it. We don't have to worry about implementing any of these ideas. Just agree. Now skipping away from the CAP and going back to just recommendations, Baltic Sea region countries should agree on a minimum area of cover for the most cost-efficient agri-environmental measures and establish a joint program for monitoring, demonstration, and developing these actions.
This recommendation actually includes two different recommendations. Can I somehow specify that I agree on one part only?
Yeah. You could try by putting your dots strategically, but it might not be interpreted right. Yeah, either or. It's a package deal. Probably the safest thing would be write no opinion, because then we think, well, maybe we better rewrite this because something wrong. Number 6, alternative designs for agri-environmental payment schemes that are outcome-based, as well as other mechanisms such as habitat banking, should be developed and included in rural development plans. More emphasis on alternative design of payment schemes, and including things like habitat banking or wetland banking. Number 7, a Baltic Sea region-based agricultural and rural development partnership should be initiated as linked with the work of HELCOM, but independent and with a broader mandate than the Agri-Environmental Forum. The mandate can emerge from initiatives and networks of the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. Basically saying that HELCOM shouldn't just have this forum, which is sort of an advisory discussion group, but have a more formal working group to concentrate on the agricultural sector. Not a part of HELCOM, but something similar and possibly related to HELCOM. Number 8 has 2 parts as well. They're both about the Baltic Sea region level assessments of diffuse pollution loads. The first one has identification of environmental sensitive areas should be supported on a Baltic Sea region level, and in the coordinated implementation strategy, the Water Framework Directive, the Marine Strategy, and Common Agricultural Policy. This involves release and harmonization of appropriate data of sufficient scale and quality on the Baltic Sea regional level. Here we have perhaps that you were looking for what is these environmental sensitive areas, what are these really? And having some type of program that says they need to be identified on a regional basis rather than country by country. The second part of the assessments of pollution loads. Given the present uncertainty in determining loads and impacts, the guiding principle should be to emphasize the diversity of agri-environmental actions and the diversity of types of farms in the landscape. So recognizing, yes, there are differences, and yes, the differences are important. Some of these recommendations might be in conflict with each other. Uniform measures, this says that you should always recognize there is differences. 2 more left, we're done. Regular qualified agri-environmental advisory service should be made available free of charge to all farms in all established individual cooperative agreements in high-risk areas. This should be incorporated in the regional development programs. This is a recommendation that there be free advisory services as part of the rural development programs. Last one, really a long one. Regulatory framework should be opened up to promote combinations of different funding sources for advancing environmental public goods through agri-environmental investments where there are clearly indicated social values. In addition, a separate fund within EAFRD should be established with supporting these investments through cooperative agreements outside the cap. There are restrictions. Once a measure is financed under the RDP, you're not allowed to complement that measure with additional funds. This says that there could be ways of opening that up. Why don't we'll wait a minute or two so anybody wants to go back and look at them again and either change their mind or add a spot or take away a spot. Taking away is difficult. You can add spots, put a different color over it. what we'll do is that your names are included here. Kaya has everyone's names. That when we've gone through all of these, I promised that we would write up a short analysis of what the results, how they differ, and send it back to everybody that has participated in these. I think you deserve at least to see what happened with these, and I think it's too difficult to collate it now, but that you will get it at the beginning of the summer here, a report and a summary of all of these. So what I would suggest is you could just leave it where you sit, and I'll pick them up when we end here at 2 o'clock. I can just go around and look for them. You don't have to pass them in. You can leave the extra spots and leave the paper, and I'll pick them up. And then I thought perhaps that, Kaya, that you would take the last, we have 20, 15 minutes, and see if there's general conclusions or discussion.
Yeah, but before that, probably also, do you know how many countries will participate in this kind of evaluation?
Yeah, the plan is that at least right now, that Finland, Poland, a combination of Lithuania and Latvia will be a joint meeting, Sweden, and we don't know yet about Schleswig-Holstein or about Denmark. So that most of the Baltic Sea region countries will be participating. At the end of the summer, our thought is to get a couple of representatives from each of the Baltic Sea region countries, that we can actually look at these recommendations, look at the report and the summary of the recommendations, of these reactions to it, have a more discussion, an oral discussion, talk about it, and then in November is when we would have a final set of recommendations. So this is just this first step towards a process where at the end of the Baltic Compass project, we hope we have some recommendations that have value for policy. But this is just the first step. We talked about this in the September, having a meeting where we would invite 1 or 2 people from each national roundtable to come and participate in an analysis of other people's results as well. So this is how they will be used. There's also, if you have a colleague that is interested, yourself are interested, on the Baltic Compass website, there will be possibility to go in there and do the same thing, just as an opinion there as well. So that if you go to Baltic Compass website, you can also have a reaction, or if you have a colleague that would be interested, you can suggest they go there.
But regarding our evaluations, then we will get it earlier than in September. So.
Oh yeah, you will get, when we've gone through this series of roundtables this spring, which will be in the next month or so, 6 weeks, after that you will get a report summarizing what this result was.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Siis tänase päeva lõpetuseks öelda, et nagu te kuulsite, siis see soovituste ja järelduste hindamisleht ilmub ka meie projekti koduleheküljele ja seal on siis võimalik veel ilmselt ka täiendavalt anda oma hinnang, kui see peaks nüüd erinema tänasest, see on vist anonüümne, ma ei ole küll kontrollinud. Aga nagu ma ütlesin, siis Baltic Compass siis veel läheb kuni novembri ja detsembri keskpaigani välja. Mõned juba, kes on varem projektis osalenud, teavad, et projekti lõpukonverents, kui ainult keegi muu seda kuupäeva meenutada, mis Taanis Kopenhaagenis toimub 24. oktoober. Et siis see on üks võimalus osaleda, kusjuures viimased korrad on olnud ka mitte ainult Baltic Compassi konverents, vaid see on siis olnud kavas Baltic Dealiga, sest praegu on töös mitu internetiprojekti, kus on siis Läänemeri veekaitse põllumajandus teemaks. Eesti puhul veel me nüüd selliseid ainult Eesti asjaosalistele rohkem seminare kavandanud ei ole. Praegu ei oska öelda, kas selline vajadus võiks tekkida, et võib-olla siiski tekib veel huvitavat informatsiooni ka aasta teisel poolel, et võiksime seda koos arutada ja vaadata, et kes lähtuvad meie enda huvides seoses MAK-iga. Aga 24. mail nüüd siis varsti järgmisel kuul toimub siis Eestis, meie instituut korraldab Baltic Compassi raames ühe sellise regionaalse ümarlaua, mis siis puudutab veemajanduskavade rakendamist ja veekaitse ja põllumajanduse teemat. Ja see on kavandatud siis rahvusvahelise seminarina, et seal on töökeeleks siis inglise keel, seal toimuvad ettekanded ja ka päeva teisel poolel on 3 töörühma, mida siis Baltic Compassi erinevad partnerid juhivad. Et see informatsioon ma saadan ka siis tänase kokkuvõttega teile laiali ja te saate ise otsustada, kas te soovite osaleda või informeerida ka oma kolleege sellest võimalusest. Aga enne kui teile jääd aega öelda, kas on veel mingeid küsimusi või mõtteid, kas või täna kuuldud teemade osas. Nii palju ma luban, et need ettekanded saavad meie koduleheküljele ja koos kokkuvõttega tuleb siis teile ka link, kus neid saab vaadata. Ja tahan väga tänada meie tõlki Enet, kes siis siin meie külalistele meie eestikeelse jutu arusaadavaks tegi. Ja tahan tänada ka Põllumajandusministeeriumi selle võimaluse eest selles kenas saalis see seminar pidada, sest see tuli mõnes mõttes plaaniväliselt ja tore oli, et meie head partnerid tulid meile vastu. Nii et suur tänu kõigile osalemast ja järgmine kord siis 24. mail, kui on huvi ja sellest järgmine kord siis juba projekti või projektide lõpukonverents Taanis.